The prison yard was filled with shouting. Smoke rose into the air. Sirens screamed. Men ran in every direction. Guards were overwhelmed. Orders were ignored. And for a moment that felt like forever, control inside Attica Correctional Facility was gone. This was not just a fight. This was a prison riot that would shock the entire United States. Inmates had taken over parts of the prison. Hostages were being held. Fear spread through every wall, every hallway, every locked door. And outside the prison, the world was watching. But how did things get this bad? How did one prison become the center of one of the most explosive riots in American history? To understand that, we have to go back to the days before the chaos, when everything looked normal. Attica Correctional Facility sat in New York, surrounded by fields and quiet roads. From the outside, it looked like any other prison. High walls, guard towers, and fences topped with razor wire. Inside, life was very different. The prison was overcrowded. Too many inmates, not enough space. Cells were small. Conditions were tough. Many inmates felt they were not being treated fairly. Days were long and repetitive. Wake up. Count. Eat. Work. Lockdown. Over and over again. Some inmates tried to stay out of trouble. Others felt anger building inside them. Conversations in the yard became tense. Complaints were shared quietly. "Nothing ever changes," one inmate said. Another replied, "One day, something will." That one day was getting closer. Guards also felt pressure. They worked long hours. They had to manage many inmates at once. Some tried to keep peace. Others used strict control to keep order. There was a clear line between inmates and guards. And that line was getting thinner. On a normal morning, everything seemed routine. Inmates lined up. Doors opened and closed. Guards watched from their posts. But small problems were already starting. Arguments between inmates. Disagreements with guards. Little moments that seemed unimportant at the time. But in a place like Attica, small problems can grow very fast. One afternoon, a misunderstanding turned into a fight. It started with shouting. Then pushing. Then more people joined. Guards rushed in and broke it up quickly. Order was restored. But something had changed. The tension was now visible. That night, whispers moved through the prison. "They're not listening to us. We need change. Something has to happen." No one knew exactly what would happen next. But everyone could feel it. The next day began like any other. But it did not stay that way. A group of inmates was being moved between areas. During the movement, confusion broke out. A door was opened at the wrong time. Someone pushed forward. Then someone else followed. In seconds, the situation changed. More inmates rushed through. Guards tried to stop them, but there were too many. The line between control and chaos disappeared. Alarms sounded. Doors slammed. But it was too late. The riot had begun. Inmates flooded into the yard. Some shouted. Some ran. Some tried to understand what was happening. A few inmates tried to calm others down. "Stay together," someone yelled. "Don't panic." But panic was already everywhere. Guards pulled back to safer areas. They called for backup. Inside the prison, control rooms tried to respond. But communication was difficult. Things were moving too fast. The prison was no longer operating the way it was supposed to. It was unpredictable. As the hours passed, the situation grew more serious. Some guards were taken as hostages. Inmates gathered in large groups. Demands began to form. They wanted better conditions, fair treatment, changes to how the prison was run. For many inmates, this was not just about anger. It was about being heard. Outside the prison walls, news spread quickly. Reporters arrived. Police gathered. Officials began planning what to do next. The entire country started paying attention. Inside Attica, time felt strange. Minutes felt like hours. Everyone was waiting for something. A decision. An action. An ending. But no one knew what that ending would look like. Some inmates believed things could be resolved peacefully. Others were not so sure. Guards inside the prison waited, unsure of what would happen next. Families outside waited for news. And leaders began making choices that would change everything. As night came, the prison was still in chaos. Lights shined over the yard. Voices echoed through the darkness. Tension remained high. Then, early the next morning, something happened that changed the direction of the entire situation. Authorities made a decision. A big one. A risky one. One that would bring everything to a turning point. Inside the prison, inmates noticed movement. Outside forces were preparing to act. And as the sun began to rise, everyone inside Attica realized something at the same time. The situation was about to explode even further. And what happened next would become one of the most talked about moments in American prison history. The morning air felt heavy. Inside Attica, no one slept well. The yard was still filled with inmates. The hostages were still being held. And the tension had not gone away. It had grown. As the sun slowly rose over the prison walls, everyone could feel that something big was about to happen. Outside, hundreds of officers had gathered. State police, troopers, officials. They stood behind barriers, watching, waiting, preparing. Inside, inmates watched too. Some stood quietly. Some paced back and forth. Some tried to stay calm, talking to each other in low voices. "We can still fix this," one inmate said. "We just need them to listen." A few inmates had stepped forward as leaders. They tried to organize things. They made sure the hostages were not harmed. They spoke about demands and solutions. They wanted better living conditions. More respect. Fair treatment. For a moment, it seemed like there might be a way forward. Negotiations began. Officials spoke from outside the walls. Messages were passed back and forth. Some people believed a peaceful ending was possible. But time was working against everyone. The longer the situation continued, the more pressure built. Inside the prison, food was limited. Water was limited. Fear was everywhere. Outside, the public was watching. Leaders were under pressure to act. And not everyone agreed on what to do. Hours turned into more hours. The talks slowed down. Small disagreements became big problems. Trust started to break. Some inmates began to lose hope. "They're not going to agree," one said. "They're just waiting." Waiting for what? No one knew for sure. As the day went on, the atmosphere changed. The calm voices became louder. The organized groups became restless. Some inmates argued with each other. Some wanted to keep negotiating. Others believed nothing would change unless something forced it. The situation was starting to slip again. Outside the prison, officials made a decision. It was not announced loudly. It was not explained to everyone. But the plan was set. They would take back control. Inside the yard, inmates noticed unusual movement. More officers. Different positions. Equipment being prepared. Something was coming. One inmate looked toward the wall and said quietly, "They're getting ready." Another asked, "For what?" The answer came in silence. Because deep down, everyone already knew. The hostages were moved closer together. Some inmates tried to protect them. Others stayed back, unsure of what would happen next. The leaders spoke again, trying to keep things calm. "Stay together," one said. "No panic." But panic was already close. Then it happened. A loud sound cut through the air. Not shouting. Not an alarm. Something bigger. Something that made everyone stop and look up. A helicopter appeared above the prison. It hovered low. Too low. Dust and debris swirled across the yard. People covered their faces. Confusion spread quickly. What's going on? Why are they so close? No one answered. Then came another moment. A sudden movement from the outside. Lines of officers advancing. Shields up. Orders shouted. Everything started moving at once. Too fast to understand. Too fast to stop. Inside the yard, everything broke. Some inmates tried to run. Some dropped to the ground. Some shouted for calm. The hostages were caught in the middle. The leaders tried to regain control, but it was gone. Completely gone. The noise grew louder. Voices. Commands. Chaos. It felt like the entire prison was shaking. And in that moment, everyone realized the same thing. The situation was no longer about talking. It was about action. Michael, one of the inmates who had tried to stay calm from the beginning, looked around in shock. "This isn't how it was supposed to end," he said. No one answered him. Because there was no time left. Within seconds, the yard that had been filled with voices turned into something else entirely. Confusion. Fear. Movement everywhere. No clear direction. No clear control. Outside, officials watched as their plan unfolded. Inside, inmates and hostages were caught in the middle of it. And the prison that had already been in chaos now reached its most intense moment. As everything happened at once, one truth became clear. This was the turning point. The moment that would decide how the Attica prison riot would be remembered forever. And as the chaos reached its peak, no one inside those walls knew exactly what would happen next. Or how far things were about to go.